Coronavirus got me all confused. My name is Karen with Fidelity. Today we are going to talk about short sales. This is going to be sort of a general overview workflow. There are some more detailed information. I'm going to give you a link to the National Association of Realtors short sale workflow whole process. It's much more in depth, but because we only have an hour, we're just going to do some of the highlights. It's a really good topic right now for all of you because this could potentially be what's happening coming down the pike in maybe 6 months or so. We might see an increase in foreclosures, short sales, things like that. So good time to get familiar with them, kind of understand the process a little bit, understand the headaches, understand what you're getting into. But you can pretty much, I think it's being predicted that we're going to see a little spike in these. So just getting prepared is always a good idea. So what's a short sale? It's a sale of a property where the net proceeds from selling the property will fall short because of the liens against the property. So you owe too much money on your property is not worth what you owe on it, and there's going to be a shortage. The lien holder in a short sale must agree to accept less than the amount owed to be able to sell the property. So what does that mean? You have a lender that has a mortgage on the property. That lender is going to have to agree to take less than what is owed to them by the homeowner. And that's probably the biggest thing with short sales, is dealing with the lender. You have to get a lender agreement that they are going to take a lesser amount than what you owe on their mortgage. Sometimes the difference is forgiven by the lender, and this is really important. There's recourse and non-recourse loans. If the lender forgives the debt, then the borrower is not going to have to make up the difference between the short sale of the house versus what was owed on the mortgage. If the lender doesn't have that forgiveness, the lender is going to demand that money, and every lender is different. We don't know what it's going to look like, post-COVID, because we don't know what band-aids things are going to be thrown at it. But just know that that's one of the questions you need to ask in the beginning. Is this going to affect the borrower, because they could get a deficiency judgment against them, which means now they have a judgment against their person and against any property they own in the future. Could cause a problem. Short sales generally cost less than a foreclosure, so lenders may want to do that as a way to minimize loss. On average, a foreclosure here in Florida, because it's a judicial procedure and there's a bunch of civil rules and all that stuff you've got to follow, it can cost tens of thousands of dollars for a lender just for one mortgage. And if it goes to trial, even more money, because you have to get witnesses and all that fun stuff. With a short sale, that's one of the things, if you can prove that it's going to be less cost to them in terms of a foreclosure, short sale might be a better option for a lender. There are things called potential short sales, where you as a realtor might look at the purchase price and then reasonably believe that the sale of that home, based on the value of it, is not going to be enough to cover payment of all liens and costs, but the seller is not willing to bring sufficient liquid assets to closing in order to pay for it. So that might be, you're taking a listing, you're talking to the seller, and you're realizing we might have to go the short sale route. Obviously, the seller's going to have to agree to it. Why short sales? Well, look at the environment we're in. We've got COVID-19 happening. I mean, tons of people have lost their jobs or are furloughed, can't make their mortgage payments. Housing seems to be doing okay, but, as we all know, we're seeing rental markets, we're seeing all kinds of things. My housing market housing has inflated ridiculously over the past 2 years. So I worked in foreclosure for a long time, so I'm always just like, where's that bubble? When's that going to burst? But they're predicting, you're going to see some effect in that way. A lot of lenders are offering that forbearance. Mortgage forbearance is not forgiveness. Mortgage forbearance is, you don't have to pay your mortgage every month. your mortgage payment, but we're going to expect that money at some point, either at the end of the forbearance period, or we may tack it on at the end of the mortgage or the terms of the mortgage, 30 years, now we get an additional couple years, or you're going to see an increase in your monthly payments. That's another thing. Every lender is different on that. Fannie and Freddie right now, I think they are tacking it on to the end, but other lenders are like, no, as soon as that forbearance is period up, we want all that money that you didn't pay us. So you have a 12-month forbearance, you owe 12 months of mortgage payments to that lender. So we're going to see where now you've got the loan is maybe more than the value of the home. Forbearance programs, usually 3 months intervals, but because if you're under the CARES Act and it's a federally backed loan like Fannie or Freddie, you get an automatic 6 months, 180 days. And then all you have to do really is call and say, I'm suffering financial hardship because of COVID, and you basically get a forbearance. You can tack on another 180 days. So right now we're looking at potentially 360 days of forbearance periods for a lot of people because they took advantage of it because they had to, because they don't have jobs. And once that forbearance period is up, what's going to happen? Spike in foreclosures, spike in short sales. And we don't know what the assistance is going to be like. As we know right now, nobody can decide on anything in terms of stimulus packages, whatever. So we can't rely on that. We have to think about the future. And this is why it's such an important time for you to be brushing up on all this good stuff like short sales and foreclosures and REOs, because that is going to potentially be what 2021 is going to look like. Who's a candidate for a short sale? You have to have experienced economic hardship, and you have to prove it. So you don't have a job, falling back on your finances, may never be able to catch up, unplanned forced career change. And this happened a lot during the financial crisis back in 2008, 2009. You had a lot of executives that lived in those big fancy houses. They lost their job because they were making all the money, and then they tried to get entry-level jobs, and now they couldn't afford their house. So those kind of things, those are economic hardship examples. And also the home value is less than the amount owed on the mortgage. So what are the elements of a successful short sale? Property has to be worth less than it's owed. And this is like just a little checklist for you so you get an idea of what you are looking for. Seller has to have some sort of hardship that it makes it almost impossible for them to keep the property. They just can't afford it. Seller has to be cooperative and willing to work with the real estate broker to put that short sale package together. There is a lot of information. I will show you what the borrower package looks like. Every lender, like I said, is different. I'm going to throw that caveat in there all the time because this is, like I said, a general overview, but there are going to be changes depending on the lender. But the seller has to be cooperative. There's a lot of negotiations, a lot of back and forth. And the seller might have to provide, their firstborn or whatever they need from the lender. So you have to have a cooperative seller. Lender also has to be willing to do a short sale. So the property is listed, there's appropriate caveats and protections for the seller, it's properly priced and effectively marketed. Lender is presented with an offer, it's accepted by the seller as well. There's a short sale package narrative explaining why the short sale is necessary and desirable. It's basically like writing a term paper to the lender on why you need a short sale. If the lender approves the offer, we close as usual. No proceeds are going to the seller, obviously, because it's a loss. How do you get started? These are the questions you have to ask to think about, to advise, encourage your seller maybe into a short sale. And we're going to talk about at the end other options besides short sales. But to get started, you want to find out how much is owed on the property. What's the mortgage amount? It's really important when you ask these questions that you are getting the documentation. Don't say the buyer or the borrower says, oh, I only owe, $150,000. Show me your loan document that's, your last mortgage payment, what's the principal and interest due, all of that, because that makes a difference. Is the seller in default on anything? Do they have a default on their mortgage or any taxes or association dues? We need proof of that. Once again, get documentation. You don't want to take the seller's word for it. Is anything in foreclosure? Has the mortgage company started a foreclosure action? That's going to make a big difference in the short sale process. In fact, a lot of people don't even know they're going to lose their home. In a typical foreclosure action, the lender sends out a notice of default to the borrower that says, you haven't paid your mortgage, we're going to start foreclosure proceedings unless you do ABCD, like pay us back. They don't do anything. It goes to court, and this can be a lengthy process sometimes, and some people are just clueless. They don't live at the property. They're not getting their mail. Excuses through the roof. But it's important with the foreclosure process, where are they in the process? Has that lis pendens? So in a foreclosure proceeding in Florida, we're judicial foreclosure, like I said, so it's a court action. Starts with a complaint. The lender files a lis pendens against the property, which means litigation's pending, puts everyone on notice that a foreclosure action is taking place. So where are we? Has the foreclosure action started taking place? Who do we need to contact? And a lot of times, the short sale is in a race with the foreclosure transaction. And in fact, even if you're doing a loan modification, that can be in a race with the foreclosure transaction. If there is a date set for the final foreclosure hearing, contact the judge, say, hey, we're trying to get the short sale done. Can we get it postponed, whatever? And then you want to contact the foreclosure department as well at the lender. Now, here's something very important to know, no matter what you're dealing with the lender. Lenders have different departments that handle different things. One division handles foreclosure, one handles loss mitigation, like loan modifications, one handles short sales, possibly, or that could be under loss mit. One handles the servicing, the payments, and a lot of them don't talk to each other. The foreclosure department and the loss mitigation department, which short sales falls under, they're not sharing the same computer screen. So they don't even know that you're trying to do a short sale on the loss mit side and there's a foreclosure action happening. So it's important to talk to all these departments, especially if there's a foreclosure happening. And you will know there's a foreclosure because that lis pendens will be recorded. If there's no lis pendens recorded and the buyers or borrowers just in default, but there hasn't been a foreclosure proceeding started, then we're not in that race just yet, but we need to get in touch with the foreclosure department and have them put a stall on it to see if we can work through a short sale department. Or work short sale, excuse me. Other things you want to know, is the seller aware that there may be insufficient equity? And you guys know, when you go sit down with a seller at a listing, their house is worth $1 million. And you're like, okay, realistically, it's only worth $250 because your house is your castle. And a lot of people don't even realize that their house is underwater. And they have no clue that it's not worth what basically they're paying on their mortgage. You're going to have to do some comps or BPO using the most current comparable sales, being realistic about the value. With short sales with lenders, when you are trying to get a lender to agree to short sale, it's going to be about transparency and accuracy and facts. Fluffing up numbers and stuff is not going to work for them. You're going to want to find out if it's at recourse or non-recourse. Recourse loan is where they're going to be personally liable for the deficiency after the sale or the foreclosure, which means the lender got less than what was owed. Now they're going after that borrower to collect that money. And it's usually through default judgment, which attaches to that person for 10 years to them personally and to any property that they own now or in the future. So what's the process? You need written authorization from the seller to do anything. You can contact the lender's loss mitigation department, speak with a short sale specialist. talk about, the intent is we'd like to do a short sale. What are the time frames? Time frames are going to vary by lender. Ask about the current turnarounds. Right now, current turnarounds may be okay. If this blows up or gets to be where we are doing a lot of short sales, that's going to be a longer period of time. Things to think about. Does a buyer want to wait 150 days to that short sale is approved and all of that? Do they want to wait a year? You have to figure out the current turnarounds. You want to prepare and submit the borrower approval package. There are also limited programs or incentives right now. You've got to ask for them. No lender is going to say, oh, we've got these incentives. You've got to do the research and say, or like the CARES Act even, like, hey, there's these, I will tell you right now, I will guarantee that if it's a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan, they're more than likely going to figure out some sort of way to either keep people in their home or make it a lot easier to go through this process. Because at the end of the day, a bank does not want your property. They want their money from the loan. So they don't want to go through foreclosure. They don't want an REO. It costs so much more money. So convincing them that a short sale is a better idea, it takes numbers and all of that, but it's, it can be a lot easier. So here's the borrower approval package. And this is why when you're dealing with the seller, they need to be cooperative, because look at all this stuff. I mean, this, like I said, varies by lender, but these are all the things they're going to have to bring in and submit to the lender to prove that they are a candidate for a short sale. Financial statement, the hardship explanation form and or letter, that's required by every lender. You have to write, if you want to do a loan modification, you have to write a hardship letter. Why can you not make your payments as is? You're going to have all these, bank accounts. Some lenders require 6 months. The IRS 4506T, last year's of tax returns, proof of all sources of monthly household incomes, pay stubs, losses, your lease of Social Security, pension, all of that. Where's all your money coming in? Babysitting money, all of that. Where are you getting your money? And then any other documentation the lender may require you may feel relevant, but those are probably the top things. You just need to prove that you can't afford this property. So how do we get through the property approval by the lender? They're going to require a signed and ratified listing agreement. They'll require a sales contract signed by the buyer and seller, which is subject to lender approval. And I believe Florida Association of Realtors just did a short sale class as well. So I think they went through the whole entire contract and all of that. You want an estimated settlement statement that shows all the proposed seller paid closing costs. So it's showing that, with including what seller's paying, they're not getting anything back. And this is what the lender is going to get, essentially. Proof of buyer's financing. This is really important. The lender wants to make sure the buyer is a viable prospect to buy this house. They want that pre-approval letter. They may even require a pre-approval letter from that lender. They don't have to use them for the mortgage, but they may require that pre-approval letter from them. And we're seeing that more and more because lenders are like, we want to make sure at the end of the day, we get to closing, all of a sudden buyer's like, oh, I couldn't get loan approval. No, we just went through this whole process. Copy of earnest money deposit, that BPO or comp. Copy of the title commitment, show what the liens are out there. And this is another big one, the junior lien holder release agreement. So in a short sale, the first lien mortgage, the usually purchase money mortgage, whoever's in first lien, they're the ones that we're working with to get the short sale done. Any junior lien holder, they're not getting any money. They're gone. They're wiped out. There's no, the first lien lender's already taking a loss. They're going to be like, oh yeah, we'll give you $20,000. I have seen that happen like very rarely, but just know that you have to get a release from the junior lien holder that says, yes, we will cut our losses. We're done. Doesn't mean they don't have a deficiency judgment depending on the loan against the borrower, but they will no longer have a lien on the property. The lender's response. So you submit all that stuff. What does the lender do? They can do a couple things, or several things. One is they can ignore the offer, which happens, and you have to keep calling and saying, hey, did you get it? What's going on? They can refuse it, and then either come back and say, this is what we'll accept for net proceeds, and numbers have to reworked, or they'll just flat out refuse it with no indication. They'll ask the seller to bring some or all of the shortfall to escrow, which means you owe $100,000 or $200,000 mortgage, your property's selling for $180,000. Lender might say they have to bring in that $20,000 right then and there as the recourse. Typical first response, and if seller's unable to do so, then go back to the lender, with information on how the seller can't do that. Or they'll approve the offer. So what happens on the lender side when they get the package? Bank acknowledges the receipt of the file. A negotiator is assigned. They order the BPO on their end. A second negotiator is assigned. The file is sent to review. They request for an arm's length affidavit, and then they issue a short sale approval letter. It sounds very simple, but it's a lot longer than that. If the lender approves, it'll be in the form of a demand to escrow to the effect that the lender will accept no less than X dollars in proceeds no later than X date. So we'll accept $180,000 by, October 31st. Even though if your purchase agreement said like November 5th, they're driving this transaction at this point. Lender may also try to reduce your commission, which happens quite a bit because they want to get as much money as they possibly can. What happens with the seller, the borrower? It's a negative impact on their credit report, but it's less than foreclosure. So you're looking 7 to 10 years. And that's one of those things that, we're going to keep an eye on as if this explodes, we're predicting. Short sales start happening, there might be some more forgiveness on the credit report side. It's easier to get a loan once you've done a short sale than it is to get a loan once you've had a foreclosure. So there's future lender guidelines before purchasing a new home. There are tax implications for the seller. They need to talk to, if you are the listing agent and let's say you're this guy's prime candidate for a short sale, you should advise them to go talk to a tax professional because there will be tax implications. Seller has to count any amount forgiven by the lender as income and pay taxes on that income, even if no actual money was received. So example, $200,000 mortgage, $180,000 property sold for, seller is going to be responsible for $20,000 potentially. Once again, there may be some forgiveness by the IRS if this becomes, it implodes in 2021. But right now, this is the rule. So who negotiates? And there are short sale negotiators out there. That's their job. They're attorneys or whatever. Realtors hire them to help them because Florida licensed real estate broker is authorized to prepare the real estate contract and negotiate the terms of sale between the seller and buyer. You're not allowed to prepare other documents that finalize the transfer of real estate. So your job is that whole negotiation process in terms of the contract, sales price, everything like that. You shouldn't negotiate the terms of the existing mortgage between the seller and the seller's lender. So you're not going in and saying, hey, let's do a loan modification. You're looking at the sale of the property. How do you make a short sale more appealing to a lender? It's all about money. Will it be better off for the lender to do a short sale and cut their loss now? Or spend, tens of thousands of dollars on a foreclosure, get that property in REO, and maybe not make that money back up. So I do know for an REO property, it can be a couple $100s a day for a lender for the holding costs. You've got property maintenance, they're vacant, all the sorts of things, code enforcements, all kinds of things. So on average, you're looking a couple $100s a day potentially. So you've got to factor all that in and prove that to the lender, like, hey, if we do a short sale, it's going to be a lot less than if you finally get an REO. And every lender is going to do an analysis on, the value of the property, the neighborhood. They're going to look at those comps and say, I bet we can get more if we get an REO and sell it. So just things to think about. But that's going to be something, to really help your seller out, if they're willing to do a short sale, is to prove that difference to the lender. It's cheaper to do a short sale for you now rather than paying it out over the long term. And the other thing, I just went way too fast. The other thing too, you can probably prove is Florida, we are a judicial state when it comes to foreclosure. So there's court costs, attorneys costs, all that fun stuff. If it goes to trial, last time around, the courts were so bogged down. We saw trials that took 3-5 years. And that's just, 3-5 years of someone not paying their mortgage, still living in the house and waiting to go to the foreclosure trial. So some things to think about. What are your challenges as a realtor? We talked about a little bit. Banks are wanting to discount your commission 1 to 2% below average in the market. With that, we're going to talk about the MLS disclosure. Is that something you're hitting as a loss? Is it something you're splitting with the other realtor? If there's a rapid increase in the number of short sales, the system will get bogged down. I can tell you from any experience, I've worked in foreclosure and loss mitigation and all of this. When the big boom happened, banks were scrambling to put bodies in seats, because there was so much stuff happening, and it just got messy and crazy, and we finally got everything worked out. But then once everything slowed down, they just were cutting departments and people. Those people that were they had 1,000 people, and now they're down to like 50. They're going to have to ramp up. They're not going to ramp up until we see that economic sign that short sales and foreclosures are here. So be prepared for that. Then you've also got that lender's lack of experience because they are hiring bodies, and they're given, the if this, then that, asking questions. So that's another thing. This is a great time to become like an expert, especially in the Florida region, so that you can help some of the newbies at the lender understand the process. Then you also have realtors with limited experience in short sales. As with anything, a lot of people are going to have to switch sides into traditional real estate, into short sales, REOs, whatever it is. You need to get the experience. You need to understand the process. Because if something gets screwed up, halfway down the road, the lender's going to walk, seller is going to be out, you're going to lose the buyer. So you need to know the process. Like I said, this is a general overview. I'm going to give you the link for that NAR workflow, which is, I don't know, I think it's like 30 pages or something, but it's really good. There's an absence of a uniform process and application because every lender is different. And that's also a challenge. If it's a government-backed loan like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, VA, USDA, those typically tend to have a more uniform process. But if you're dealing with a Bank of America, a Chase, they're all going to have their own systems and old setups. Other challenge are the second lien holder negotiation and demands. So like I said, for the most part, second lien holder has to sign a release, says we're not going to get any money, or we're taking, a couple $1,000s or whatever and walking, and that's all you're getting, and you're releasing that lien. You're no longer have a lien on the property, and that can be a challenge. Buyers walking due to difficulties with unresponsive lenders, lost documents, inaccurate or unrealistic value assessments, and long processing delays. And it can. I mean, even now, it's not a smooth process. There's a lot of back and forth. Lender wants to see more information. You get that package, you find out what the lender wants in terms of everything in that package. You get those T's crossed, I's dotted. You give the lender, things go a lot smoother. Sending stuff piecemeal is going to kill the deal. So getting on a lender's website or talking to that loss mitigation department, what do you specifically need? Can you email me your checklist and go through it and have all of that will make the process go smoother. But because of that negotiation back and forth with lenders, buyers will get sick and be like, I'm done. Like, I didn't realize this is going to take 150 days. The MLS disclosure. So NAR's MLS policy requires multiple listing services to give their participants the ability to disclose any possibility of a short sale to other MLS participants. So realtor to realtor in the notes section, this potential short sale. You can, but you're not required to, communicate to other realtors how any lender mandated reduction in the gross commission in the listing contract will be appointed between the listing and cooperating brokers. So not required to discuss the reduction, but you have the ability to in the MLS. Short sale information should be included in the confidential remarks field of a listing as soon as the listing broker knows about the possibility of a short sale. And here's sort of the fine line. You have to be careful not to compromise the seller's chance of getting the best price possible by disclosing the seller's distressed condition too early. If you are unsure, like when do you disclose it, when do you not? Talk to your broker, obviously. Call Florida Realtors Legal Hotline. Reach out to NAR and they can walk you through it. You do not want to compromise the seller's ability to sell their home because it's, potentially a short sale or not. Other considerations, there's fraud. There is a lot of fraud when we're talking about, it can be anything from seller faking economic hardship. It's such a terrible thing to say, but truthfully that, or the buyer is not an arm's length third-party person, some sort of relative of the seller. We're getting the house at a discount now. Kickbacks from secondary lenders, from buyer or realtor not disclosed on the settlement statement. Kickbacks, first of all, are wrong under RESPA, period. Flip transactions where, same thing. Seller may have been in a relationship with an investor buys it because they're going to flip it. They got it at a discount at the short sale and they're flipping it for more money. A lot of lenders, Fannie and Freddie, actually have language that they put on their deed, that deed restriction. There's no, you cannot sell the property. It depends, can be 60 to 90 days. Non-arm's length transactions falls with under fraud. My brother's buying my house during the short sale. I can't do that. Funds between transaction parties, pretty much on the title end, we're going to make sure all of that. If things are going underhand under the table and, and everyone knows about it, we got a problem. We have to put everything on the settlement statement. Occupancy, are there people living there? Are there tenants? That's going to be an issue that needs to be resolved. So how do you prepare yourself? Obviously, education. Ask your broker if your company has policies and procedures regarding short sales. And this comes directly from NAR, so from the horse's mouth. Know the laws, procedures, and timelines regarding foreclosure. So here in Florida, every jurisdiction, every court may have different timelines. So wherever your property is located, it's not a bad idea to find out what are their timelines. We have statutory rules as to foreclosure. There's court rules that are, just go across the board in terms of a complaint's filed, you have 20 days to respond. If you don't respond, there's a default judgment. All that's kind of basic. And then there's timelines in terms of when the foreclosure sale happens, when the certificate of title is issued, all kinds of things. So knowing all of those timelines, and there's across the board in Florida, the timelines that might vary is where is the court at? Is there going to be delays because they're bogged down? And those are the kinds of things you want to know as well. You want to read the most up-to-date material on short sales like NAR or Florida Association of Realtors. Get on their websites anyway. Get on, their newsletters, because they're sending out information all the time. Like, hey, we've got this going on. Like I said, Florida Association of Realtors just did a short sale webinar, I think last week, 2 weeks ago. See if it's in the archives and if you can watch it and learn from that. And then constantly, be checking that, because if this grows like we think it's going to be growing, rules may change. Laws change all the time. So need to be up to date on it. There's a lot of articles and advice on short sales. Talk to other realtors that may do them. My cautionary tale with anything you read on the internet is you need to know the sources from. Just like, oh, there's this great article. Who wrote it? I don't know. It should come from somebody with some sort of accreditation. And this is the link to that short sale workflow. Like I said, really in-depth information. So hopefully you check it out, because if you're interested in doing this, the potential is going to be there for you to do this as, a business and market yourself as a short sale realtor. So definitely go through the process, educate yourself as much as possible. And I think, oh, no, we've got options besides short sale. So let's say you have a seller that's just like, I don't want to do short sale. Here are some other things. The seller can bring the cash to close. That's the difference between that mortgage and the sale of the property. They can try and do a loan modification, which is also through the loss mitigation department. That sheet I showed you of the borrower's package, it's pretty much that they have to submit, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And every lender is different on what they require for a loan modification. You have to be employed. So that's one thing. And all a loan modification does is changes the terms of the loan. It can either lower the monthly payment by tacking the rest on to the end of the loan term, can change the the interest rate, a bunch of different things. But it is an option. They are painful to go through, truly, and that's why a lot of people get turned off by them. I imagine that's going to be Fannie and Freddie's sort of band-aid at the end of the forbearance period, is let's do loan mods for those people that can do a loan mod. But like I said, you have to prove you can pay your mortgage, and if you don't have a job, that's not going to be a viable option. There's a deed in lieu of foreclosure, and that's where you as the homeowner sign over the property to the bank as a release from that mortgage. So instead of going through the foreclosure process, you're like, here, bank, let's not go through the foreclosure process. I'll just deed you the property. You cut me loose. No harm, no foul. Still a hit on your credit report. Not as bad as a foreclosure, though. Not every bank wants to do that, though. So it's another thing that, they have to be convinced it's a better plan than going through foreclosure. Bankruptcies have already spiked. And a bankruptcy, it's not as horrible as it sounds. There's 3 different types of bankruptcy you can do. Well, 2, Chapter 7 or a liquidation, and a Chapter 13 with is a workout. You have to have a job for a Chapter 13 though. So if you've lost your job and you've got a bunch of debt, Chapter 7 liquidates that debt and you get to start over. It is on your credit report for 10 years, but with the bankruptcy, it actually is less detrimental to you in terms of getting a job and getting a loan. There's a lot more forgiveness from banks and employers. So those are some other options. If your seller is not sure, you don't want to sit there and go through all the legalities of stuff. You want to get them to talk to an attorney. truthfully and say, here are some other options. But, you can definitely say, maybe the bank can do a loan mod. Maybe they'll do a deed in lieu of foreclosure, because the other option is foreclosure. And that can be lengthy and painful. And when you go through the eviction process, it's not fun either. So with that is all I have. Does anyone have any questions? I hope you guys all, found something interesting in here, and really just continue to educate yourself on this. Same with foreclosure and REOs. You want to make sure you're getting most up-to-date information. Rules and laws are going to change over the next few months, as we have, I don't know how many people are unemployed right now. Something like, I don't even want to say the number, but it's millions and millions and millions of people. And what are we going to do with them? We're going to have a bunch of people really hurting out of homes. I can tell you right now that whatever act they're going to come up with next, they're going to start seeing some stuff like that. But just be prepared for it, because short sales might be a solution that lenders would rather take than a foreclosure. And that's it. Tommy, you got anything?
I don't think so. Let me just check on Facebook, see if anybody, sometimes it's a little delayed, so see if any questions come in through there. Let's see. No, doesn't look like we have any questions.
Awesome.
Thanks again as always. And then, yeah, we'll touch base on what other classes we can get scheduled going forward.
Fabulous. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll talk again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Karen. Everybody have a good day.
All right. Take care.
Bye.